Hi folks! I've been lucky enough to have the opportunity to see a number of documentary films this year, all of which have been quite good and some of which are even formidable contenders for this year's Academy Award for Best Documentary. So I thought I would do a brief summary of the ones I've seen and why you should definitely check them out if you have the chance. Catfish tells a somewhat bizarre story about a New York photographer and his online correspondence via Facebook, text messaging, and other newfangled forms of communication with a Michigan family who he's never met in person. I can't really say any more without spoiling the rest of the movie, but I will say that what follows is an utterly enthralling series of dramatic twists and unusual turns, leading to a conclusion that ties into the way new technologies have affected the way we live our lives in this digital age. One of the things that's interesting about this film is how the filmmakers, Ariel Schulman and Henry Joost, make no attempt to exclude themselves from the story. A common ideology is that good documentarians are invisible to their audience, but with these two, both they and the fact that they're making this movie are very much a part of the story. It's something that's not very often seen in non-fiction cinema. Countdown to Zero is an unsettling picture that warns us of the lingering threat that we could all be blown to smithereens at any moment by a nuclear catastrophe. Director Lucy Walker gives the film an essay-like quality by using a famous quotation from John F. Kennedy that serves as a thesis statement for why nuclear Armageddon is a distinct hazard we still face some 50 years after the Cold War. It's a well-organized and thoroughly researched piece of work that leaves you feeling quite on edge, especially after one particular sequence that simulates a hypothetical nuclear explosion centered above Times Square, New York City, and that is one alarming hypothetical. Exit Through the Gift Shop is a quirky look at the subculture of street art, directed by the mysterious but prolific street artist known as Banksy. Only the film isn't really about him or about his art, but about a funny little Frenchman named Terry Guietta who took up the hobby of videotaping street artists in the act while living in California. The film chronicles his rise from an amateur videographer to a bona fide street artist himself with his own studio and sizable fan base. Besides this being one of the best documentaries of the year, this is also one of the best comedies of the year. Terry Guietta is a larger-than-life personality, and his antics had me laughing more than any other film I've seen in 2010. With humor and insight, Exit Through the Gift Shop extrapolates from this kooky tale of fame and fortune to make broader commentary on the true natures of art and genius. But perhaps the best documentary I've seen this year is Charles Ferguson's Inside Job, a searing expose on how the global economic meltdown of 2008 came to pass as a result of the irresponsible actions of self-serving Wall Street CEOs, politicians, and academics. With ease and focus, Ferguson intelligently explains how the deregulation of America's banking network allowed collateralized debt obligations and credit default swaps to flood the derivatives market, thus enticing the rating companies to give them inflated ratings, which in turn prompted foolhardy investment banks to make risky investments in subprime CDOs with no long-term stability. All of this, and several other factors, left an already poorly structured financial system teetering more and more precariously on the precipice of total collapse, and the rest, of course, is history. The research that went into this film is staggering in its density and complexity, but what we see is a slick, organized, witty, and eye-opening lesson in current events. It's a terrific movie, one of the year's best. Restrepo is an absolutely riveting film that follows a year in the life of an American platoon stationed in the Korangal Valley of Afghanistan, deemed the most dangerous place on Earth for the daily onslaughts of insurgent fire that it receives. Directors Tim Hetherington and Sebastian Junger are not all that interested in the politics of the war, but simply with what the soldiers have to face day in and day out. Their film may lack structure, but they make up for it and then some with the raw, visceral, authentic power of the footage they attained, some of which is incredibly harrowing. Every soldier who arrives at Korangal at the beginning of the film leaves a changed man by the end of their 12-month tour of duty. That is, if they're one of the men who survived. And finally, Waiting for Superman from Davis Guggenheim, the Oscar-winning director of An Inconvenient Truth, examines the flaws of the American education system, a system that seems to put a number of priorities ahead of the needs of the children, who consequently find themselves foiled at every turn by the system's labyrinthine bureaucracy. Now, one of the slight issues I actually had with the film is that it's not all that illuminating. The problems with school systems in North America have been well publicized, and the movie seems to state the obvious a lot of the time. Still, it's nothing if not admirable as a piece of social activism. The real power of the film comes from the specific case studies of 5 bright children who may inevitably fall through the cracks of the system as their parents struggle to set them up with the education they deserve. The film also features a beautiful end-credit single by John Legend that deserves serious consideration from the Academy as one of the year's best original songs. Again, if you have the opportunity to catch any of these documentaries in theaters or on DVD, I would highly recommend it. I think you'll find them well worth your time. Ta for now.